What's up, guys? Back again. We have another episode of Consumed, and on this one, we're going to be covering GNC's 2018 Q3 earnings. Tons of information on this report. I expected that to happen. They delayed their announcement on their earnings. I think it was supposed to happen maybe 2 weeks ago. And because of that, I knew there was going to be a lot of information on there. So be patient with me, guys. We're going to cover everything on here. There's going to be a ton, and honestly, a ton of information that was kind of put out in this report. It kind of all got kicked off with the delay of the earnings, and that was around the $300 million Harbin pharmaceutical investment that I've talked about a ton of different times on some of my videos. I've also talked about it on some of the videos I did with Price Plow. This has been in the works for pretty much this whole year, but it finally closed last week. Because they knew the timing of it was going to close a little bit after the original earnings date was announced, they decided to push back that earnings date to a Friday after the bell closed, which is an odd earnings date timing. But regardless, they kind of knew that there was going to be a lot of information in this. There was going to be a Harbin pharmaceutical investment that's going to close. So they did have that close, and they actually saw their first $100 million tranche, or kind of payment. It's a fancy finance word that they like to use with tranche, but first $100 million is in the bank right now, and I believe they used that to pay off some of their debt, which was pretty much expected. And I think they're going to have another $50 million before the end of the year, and then the other 150, the other half of it, is going to be executed sometime in the first quarter of 2019. Before we kind of get into all the juicy kind of nuggets of information, let's kind of just cover some of the numbers. I think that it's important for you guys to understand the numbers of GNC. So this quarter they had top line revenues of $580 million. That was about 5.5% down year over year from 2017. And they also saw a sequential 6% loss from last quarter. There are some seasonalities and things that go along with retail businesses, especially nutritional supplement businesses. So I normally don't talk about like sequential type of things unless it's kind of important. And I think that kind of the 6% is a little bit outside of what they probably expected. So I just want to kind of mention that one for you guys. In terms of like the big kind of metric that a lot of like retail, brick and mortar, physical retailers like to report is same store comps. And GNC saw a reduction in 2.1% of their same store comps. So they saw less foot traffic, less sales in their same stores. And that's usually how they define same stores, I think, is if the store has been operating for a year without it being changed, like location wise, or getting a refresh on the look of it or anything like that, it usually is considered like in the same store category. The majority of these stores within GNC's kind of portfolio are same stores. They haven't been opening a lot of new stores. Kind of get to why that is later in this video. Revenue's down, margins also down, I think 1%. So that's kind of, the double whammy in terms of, kind of bad numbers this quarter. GNC is primarily kind of made up into like 3 sections, kind of where they get their revenue is. And I'll kind of start with the first one, and that's what is like their domestic sales, which they consider that both US and Canada. That accounts currently for about 83% of their business. This quarter, they saw about a 3.2% year over year decline. This has been happening for quite a while. If you guys watched a lot of my videos on GNC and some of their earnings calls, there's always the yin and the yang between US sales kind of declining, and then on the flip side, international sales continuing to kind of grow. The international sales, though it only accounts for now about 8% of their business, they are continuously seeing growth year over year on those numbers. And I think this quarter they saw 6% year over year growth. They did note that China was down a little bit because of some wholesaling and just that's kind of a different part of their business. But with the Harbin pharmaceutical investment, obviously we're going to probably expect that to change very quickly, and I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of this video. But they also wanted to highlight, I think they highlighted their India, their new India partnership, and a couple other partnerships in Asia. I think GNC has done a really good job at picking some good partners, and when they don't pick good partners for distribution in certain countries, they're pretty quick to kind of change things around and move pieces, because they understand that GNC is a global brand and it really has some power across the world, and they want to make sure that they get every bit of growth out of those markets. Kind of last piece of the revenues is what they consider like manufacturing or inter-segment sales. And the manufacturing is up about 2% this year. And so store count, like year over year, I think I've thrown around some numbers, and I think they announced like 300 store closures. But you kind of look at like during these first 9 months comparable to last year's first 9 months, their store count's down about 540 stores. That is only about like 6% of their stores. So there's not like, that number seems like extremely big, but GNC has like about 8,500 stores right now. If you count, store within a store, US, Canada, franchises, international, that's just a lot of physical locations. So transition this kind of video into more of the strategy part of the video. The part of the video that I want to kind of dig in the most around is, because we're talking about store closures, I think it's just natural to kind of dive into a big piece of their earnings call, talking about their store closures. I'm going to link a video. If you guys haven't watched it, I put it out a couple of weeks ago, I think maybe about a month ago, and basically asked for GNC to do a few things. One of them was around a store optimization plan, and I think that it was just obvious. It wasn't something that I can see into the future. This is something that they needed to do, but it does seem that they're going in line with a lot of the things that I was saying in that video. So if you guys have a chance, make sure you guys do check out that video. It's a really good video on just kind of some different kind of strategies in terms of what I believe GNC needs to do to kind of change their recent performance and kind of get back into growth mode. But the store optimization plan that Ken Martindale, the CEO, kind of talked about on the call was, around kind of closures, not only closures, but some, them looking at their whole portfolio and kind of optimizing it in a way that is going to make sense to them. So he's saying in the next 3 years, he expects about 700 to 900 stores domestically to close. So right now, GNC domestic, and this is accounting for both like corporate owned and franchise stores in the US and Canada market, they have about 4,300 stores. So when somebody's talking about 700 to 900 stores, they're talking about a pretty good reduction in their store count. That's not off of the whole 8,500. And I'm not sure if that also accounts for like the store within a store that they have with Rite Aid. Rite Aid has a whole bunch of other problems going on with their business, with talks of mergers and purchases and a lot of different things they're getting thrown around. So I'm not exactly sure where this like store within the store concept is, but they didn't really highlight that within the talks. They were just kind of talking about domestic stores. So I'm going to assume that it's off for the 4,300. This is a little bit more aggressive than I think I was expecting them to kind of talk about. But if, I said within the next year, I think they should do about 5% of their locations. So it kind of goes in line every year. They're kind of seeing 5 to 7% they want to close in the next 3 years. So maybe, I just wasn't seeing a little bit too far out on this conversation, but they are talking about a lot of their stores not, producing profit. I mean, I think they said about 10% of their stores right now domestically do not either make a profit, like they're either flat or they make a negative profitability. And that's unexplainable. I mean, that's just one of those things where either it's a bad operator, costs have risen so high within a location. There's just a variety of different things that are probably going on with those stores, but it's time to kind of cut the fat at this point. There's no point to kind of keep around a lot of stores just to kind of have a vanity metric of these high store counts. Ken Martindale is kind of talking about like lease flexibility, length of leases within GNC, and he's saying like the average lease length right now is about 2.7 years. So he's seeing, that's a pretty short time frame. There's a lot of ability to kind of shift and move and kind of do different things. So this flexibility is not only going to help them with some closures of locations, the 700 to 900, but they're also saying there's a lot of opportunity for them to kind of refresh some stores. Some stores have been around for a long period of time with not getting any TLC. They're also saying there's some opportunity for some of those stores or some stores of their mix to be relocated. And then there's some ones that they think from corporate that they can move over to franchise and they make more sense within their real estate portfolio. So there's some flexibilities and different things that they believe is going to kind of provide some opportunity. And I talked about this in my speaking engagement at Supply Side West last week. I was talking about just these retailers needing to kind of look at their space also differently, you know, not necessarily only thinking about it as shelf space, merchandising space, but how do we, how do we kind of adapt and use that space differently? Is that micro shipping points for e-commerce? Is that click and collect type of things that's doing really well with like grocery e-commerce? There's just a lot of different things that they're probably going to look at over the next couple of years with their real estate portfolio, and kind of, because there's such a small length in their lease terms right now, they do have a lot of flexibility to kind of do some different things. They kind of go on to talk a little bit around just like increase in like occupancy costs and how commercial real estate market is kind of crazy, and they're struggling in some markets to find the right locations and costs and everything to run their businesses at a profitable in a profitable way. And I think this goes along with a lot of the physical retailers right now kind of looking at their foot traffic, looking at their same store comps, looking at all these things and saying, hey, certain markets we used to have a ton of locations to service them. Now with e-commerce and everything, we can service these markets just the same and not really lose a lot of the service for people that want to go in the store. But we don't need to have so many locations because there's not as many people going into these locations, that it just honestly just makes more sense for us to kind of shrink each geographical area to service less people going into a physical retailer. So this is just all smart business for them to do. This is not going to be good for press releases, or this is not going to be good for news headlines. And I've already looked at some of the headlines from the financial news and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania's area, and store closures are not good because that means people are going to be laid off, people are going to lose jobs, and regardless, in America, losing jobs is just not something that you want to be putting out there in the news right now. So though it's not popular, it's needed, and I 100% support kind of that store optimization plan because I called for it for a while, and I put a video out calling for it a month ago. So next part that they were talking about was cost reduction plan. Again, another thing that was in my video and something that I said they needed to do. They need to look at their costs, and they're kind of saying in the next 2 years they see about $40 to $50 million in cost reductions around some different areas. So they're calling for it like in the sales, general, and administrative, an area that I kind of really highlighted and said there's probably some fat they can trim there. They're also kind of highlighting some of those occupancy costs and things from optimizing their stores. They're going to get some extra kind of cost reduction benefits there. And then other ones they're kind of highlighting are kind of around their manufacturing piece, and then their shift from physical to e-commerce. And they're kind of saying supply chain wise, they see some additional kind of cost reductions. I'm not exactly sure what those could be. They definitely need to offset anything logistically because there are going to be an increased cost logistics wise in terms of e-commerce production. And then they're seeing some packaging reductions, which again, if you're going to have e-commerce kind of grow and be a big part of your business, you need to make sure that you have packaging that is appropriate for e-commerce. You don't need to be shipping hard plastics around and a bunch of air around in these certain jugs. You need to make sure that you are creating packaging that works well for e-commerce. And since we're kind of talking about e-commerce, as a digital first consultant, I'm always interested if a retailer or CPG portfolio breaks out their e-commerce performance. And GNC is saying, at this point, domestic sales wise, they're about 7% of their business is e-commerce. So that accounts to about $34 million in sales this quarter. I believe that's about a $2 million sequential gain from last quarter. So, seeing a pretty good, strong growth. They're kind of highlighting their, both kind of their e-commerce, sales, direct sales, but they're also talking about their the time on the platform on Amazon with their selling some of their goods on there. Also, you guys have followed me on LinkedIn. I kind of mentioned that they also were doing a private label accelerator with Amazon with one of their new, I think it's called Challenge or something by GNC. I'm not exactly sure. I can't remember exactly, but they're highlighting Amazon, saying, hey, we have to be on Amazon. We have to be partners with Amazon. We need to especially some of our private label products, they need to be on Amazon because there's just so much traffic that's going to that site that it's at this point irresponsible for us not to have some element of partnership with a retailer like Amazon. GNC was also kind of mentioning that their quarter got off to a really bad start, I guess, and because of that reason, they needed to change some of their incentive plans for their store associates. So they actually kind of mid-quarter changed up some of those comp plans, and I guess they made a shift from like single item comp to more of like a basket comp, and I think the basket element needs to be some type of GNC basic type product that has high margin. So like a fish oil or a multivitamin or probiotic or something like that, which on the surface maybe seem normal, or hey, we want to get bigger baskets, but because they're saying, hey, we're focusing on basic items and then GNC branded basic items, it honestly, to me, it doesn't feel as like kind of slimy or dirty as a sales tactic, because you're pushing things that people should be taking or need to have in their basic portfolio, and you're saying, hey, we trust in our brands, we know that our brands are great. They also happen to have a lot of margin for us, so why push a third-party item in those baskets? Why does it, it makes more sense for us to push an item like that, and let's make sure that we can, beef up some of the margins with maybe our proteins and some of our like other lower margin items, maybe like functional foods and beverages and things like that they're focusing on in their GNC, in the GNC kind of merchandising mix right now. And in terms of like, I talk a lot about like GNC branded items and their kind of business and why it's such a big, important part of a GNC is because it's 52% of their domestic sales are GNC branded products. So, out of every dollar that comes in, 52 cents of that dollar goes to a GNC branded item. So that's just a ton of private label activity that's going on. It's much bigger than any other kind of retailer. It's a big kind of push for them to create this kind of exclusive environment in terms of products. And they also kind of highlighted this quarter that 9% of their business domestically is also going to exclusive products or brands. So this is like the Ghost lifestyle that are exclusive to GNC. In terms of like when people come into the store, almost 2/3 of those customers are going to leave with exclusive type of products. And that gives GNC the ability to kind of have some walls and moats built around their business, because those can't be bought anywhere else. Now, arguably, you can buy some of them on in Amazon. There are some you can't, but a lot of those items, especially GNC branded items, you can buy on Amazon. So it's not a completely exclusive experience, but it's an important kind of item to note. And GNC, I mean, I always kind of want to give GNC props for the private label business. They do a really good job at creating products that I believe are well made and put out there for the consumers that are going into those stores. Are they the best products out there? No. Are they, can people pick me apart and say, oh, well, this product's better? I get it, but in terms of the clientele that's coming in, there's some good products. It's not like they're selling, multi-level marketing products and just junk products. They do have a lot of really good brands, private label brands that they've built. Ones they've highlighted on this call is like Slimvance. I think it's about a $50 million brand right now, product. It's their biggest weight management product. So I'm assuming pretty high margin product. I haven't looked at the formula, but most weight management products are really high margin products. So it's great business for GNC. They're also, kind of revamping their AMP line, their Beyond Raw line. They're introducing a lot of like functional foods, beverages, things that are really good on trend products that though maybe have less margin, they're just grab, go, convenient, great products to definitely add some extra kind of foot traffic within the stores. And they're also kind of launching this Earth Genius to kind of get more into the natural space that I think they've been lacking innovative products in for kind of ever. I think it's at this point, it's kind of one of those things they have to kind of capture those customers that are coming in and asking about things. Kind of, keeping with the trend of like exclusive, exclusive experiences, products, those types of things. GNC is building out a pretty good loyalty program. I think in terms of like free loyalty members. They have about 16 million members in that kind of free loyalty program. And then they have about 1 million in their kind of pro access paid program, which they're saying actually account, and this is kind of surprising to me, 1 million customers actually account for about 25% of the revenue. And they're seeing about 4 times more purchasing power coming from those 1 million members than the overall kind of customers that come in there. This is kind of the Amazon Prime effect, the ecosystem effect that, you know, companies like Amazon or Apple, Adobe, or kind of all these companies are kind of building right now and saying, hey, we need to get personalized. We need to understand who our customers are. We need to get a lot of information from our customers. We need to offer them, you know, benefits and things to keep them within our ecosystem, create, you know, these higher switching costs so consumers can't just go and click the buttons and easily kind of move to a different similar product without kind of feeling like they're missing out on some element that they get with these loyalty programs or ecosystems. So, you know, GNC is doing that right now. They're kind of looking at this from both like technology, products, all kinds of different incentives to get more of an exclusive experience. You know, be that digitally, be that in store, regardless, they're trying to create more and more exclusive, you know, exclusive personalized type of experiences to help the consumer stay within the GNC ecosystem. And then finally, like what I kicked off with China, I think there's a lot of opportunity in China. I don't think anybody in the industry will deny that. I'll say that it's very difficult to do business in China, especially with nutritional supplements. And because of that, the GNC joint venture with Harbin Pharmaceuticals makes a lot of sense. They have an in-country expert that will understand how to, you know, market, distribute, manufacture, get the right, you know, have the right regulatory experience to get things pushed through. It honestly makes a lot of sense. And GNC is saying, hey, this is going to be about a $200 million business for us. This is going to be $200 million of revenue that is going to come in the next couple of years. Though we've had some struggles in China, that's because we've had to take it on ourselves. And now we have a partner. We have somebody that's going to really help us here. So, you know, I'm pretty optimistic around the GNC transaction. I think they had to give up a ton to get somebody like Harbin Pharmaceutical to give them $300 million. But at this point, GNC was kind of, you know, backpedaling at this point, and I wouldn't say that their back was completely against the wall, but they had to make a decision for the long-term success of GNC, and I think this was one of those areas that just was kind of needed. And though there might have been some other moves available, this was a really, really good offer. I know this video is probably pretty long, so I'll cut it short here, but I want to thank you guys for taking some time out of your day to listen to me talk about this GNC earnings report. If you guys did get some value out of this, make sure you guys are liking, subscribing to this channel, sharing some of my posts. All of my social media is linked down below. Feel free to add me on any of those. If you guys do have any questions or anything, feel free to reach out to me, but I'll see you guys on the next one.